I'm gonna go ahead and broadcast since we're within a minute, and then I'll introduce everyone starting right at 1. Just for all our attendees, I'm going to be introducing everyone and getting started in the next 30 or so seconds. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this virtual summit presentation, Prerequisites for Implementing Strong Co-Requisites, a panel discussion. My name is Kelsey Wiest, and I'm an educational courseware specialist here at Hawks Learning. Our panel today is hosted by Dr. Tristan Denley and features Amy Young and Brandon Ford from Navarro College and Emily Maddox from Rowan College. Dr. Denley earned his PhD in mathematics from Trinity College in Cambridge and held positions in Europe and North America before becoming Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs on the Tennessee Board of Regents. He now serves as Chief Academic Officer of the University of Georgia System. His work focuses on implementing a broad spectrum of college completion initiatives spanning pedagogy redesign to the role of predictive analytics and data mining in higher education. Professor Young has taught developmental mathematics at Navarro College for over 15 years. During this time, she's been working on her PhD in education. At Navarro College, Amy taught both credit level math and psychology classes. She's also assisted in creating a handbook for the adjunct faculty and have been instrumental in developing and organizing a conference for the adjunct instructors teaching developmental math, reading, and writing. Professor Ford has taught developmental mathematics with Hawks Learning courseware since 2007. He's a full-time professor and department chair of developmental studies at Navarro College in Corsicana, Texas. And last but not least, Professor Maddox has worked in higher education for nearly 15 years. She's an adjunct instructor and the coordinator of Academic Support Center at Rowan College in Gloucester County. She's also the course coordinator of Enhanced English Composition 1, Principles of English Grammar, and College Reading 3, as well as the interim coordinator of English Composition. She's involved in efforts to redesign developmental education at Rowan College. We're so excited to have everyone here with us today. If you have questions during the webinar, please enter those in the Q&A box located at the panel at the top or bottom of your screen. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters.
All right, well, great. Well, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope that you're staying well in these uncertain times. And I apologize for if you hear any kind of any odd noises or anything. I'm working at home, as I think many people are right now, and so you may hear a dog bark or people outside or all kinds of things. And I apologize for that if that becomes a problem. So what I wanted to do is to initially tell you about work that's been happening in the university system of Georgia as we have made a transition to using the Corequisite remediation model for working with developmental English and developmental mathematics. And then I'll hand over to the other presenters who'll tell you about kind of the work that they are doing at their various and doing similar work both in math and in English. And then I know that at the end of our session, there'll be plenty of time for us to answer questions from both from a system viewpoint and different institutional viewpoints, as well as maybe details about exactly what's happening with our in our different universities and colleges. So let me share my screen, and I can talk about the work that's happening in USG to begin with. There we go. So the University System of Georgia is a system of 26 universities and colleges across the state of Georgia, all the public universities and colleges. We have roughly 350,000 students across the system, across those 26 institutions. And each year we have somewhere between 20 and 30,000 of those students who are involved in some kind of developmental education through the years. What we've been doing over the last few years is to gradually implement the co-requisite idea of remediation. So what I want to do is to kind of talk through exactly what we've done there and what it is that we've found. So, and I'm going to show you kind of throughout this similar kind of chart. And the idea here is to show you the success rates of our approaches to remediation, looking at different kinds of approaches. So you can see the blue bar that you're looking there is that's a traditional approach to remediation. You can see back in 2013 in our system, we used a very traditional approach to developmental education. Students going through perhaps basic algebra and intermediate algebra, and then finally getting into college algebra or elementary statistics or math modeling or quantitative reasoning, one of the different gateway courses. You can see that the chart that I'm showing there is the success rates, not of the students in each of those developmental pieces, but actually the success rates of the students in completing a credit-bearing math class within their first academic year. We look within the first academic year as that metric because of data that we have that shows that students being successful in math and English in their first academic year enables them to be about 10 times more likely to graduate from their college than students who are not able to be successful in math and English in their first academic year. So first academic year is kind of the place to look. So you can see from those blue charts that overall about 20% of those students were successful in completing a math class, a gateway math class, a math class that satisfies their gen ed, a general education requirement in their first academic year, and that proportion kind of varies depending on what I've done is broken it out here by ACT math subscore. So you can see the better prepared students who people have a 19 or a 20 or a 21, they're passing that course at about a 40% rate, all the way down to students who have an ACT math below 14, passing that credit-bearing math class at about 10 or so percent. More recently, we moved to an approach which we call the foundations approach. The foundations approach was with students still having that prerequisite remediation, still a course they had to take before the credit-bearing class, but you can see, but we compressed that remediation into a one-semester experience, and you can see that everyone does a little better in that kind of approach. That the students at the low end move from about 10% to about 20%, all the way across, and the total now moves from about 20%, actually up to 29%, almost 30%. You can also see the red bar, and the red bar is the implementation of co-requisite. And what we've done since 2015 is to gradually scale the implementation of the co-requisite approach in mathematics and in English. The co-requisite approach, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's the methodology where students are enrolled directly into the credit-bearing class that they need for their degree, college algebra class or math modeling class or a quantitative reasoning class in our case. And then as well as being enrolled in that, they're also enrolled directly into a support structure, an aligned required supplementary instruction experience we call the co-requisite experience. And you can see that when they do that, the students do quite substantially better. So overall, we see the success rates increase to above 60%, so more than doubling the overall success rate. But you can see that the improvements in success are not only just limited to the students who are better prepared, but you can see that there's a significant increase in success rate all across the preparation spectrum, all the way down to students who have ACT scores even below 14. Still, about 2/3 of those students passing that credit-bearing math class in their first academic year. Now, as I say, over that period, 2015 to 2017, we were in a process of scaling that. In the fall of 2018, we actually fully implemented co-requisite. And so now the purple bar that I've just added, that is now our full co-requisite implementation. All students across the entire system who need some form of remediation in mathematics now going into that same kind of methodology across all 26 of our institutions, everything from open access institutions the way through research. And you can see the same kind of pattern all students doing remarkably better in passing their gateway math class, and again, all the way across the preparation spectrum. Now, well, what's nice about this model is, of course, it's part and parcel of a much larger set of work that we're doing to try to improve success in gateway math. And if you bring all of that together, both that and course redesign kinds of approaches that we have for students who aren't even involved in remediation, you can see that as we've implemented and scaled and now finally fully implemented the co-requisite approach, we've literally improved the overall success rates of students in gateway math classes by almost 10 percentage points over a very short period of time. So that's what the world looks like in mathematics. Let me transition to English, and actually the results look strikingly similar in English to those in mathematics. You can see that again, we use the traditional approach and the foundations approach. Both of those produced results that were about 40-something% of students were being successful in passing their credit-bearing math class, their credit-bearing English class in their first academic year. You can see by implementing the co-requisite approach, we increased that 40-something% up to a little bit more than 70%. Again, a really dramatic increase. But again, you can see that that increase is not only for the students towards the upper end of the preparation spectrum, but literally all across, all the way down to students with ACT English writing scores that are in the very low teens. Still, those students are passing that credit-bearing English class at still a very strong rate. In fact, it's at least a reasonable question to ask what you think the ACT writing score is actually correlated to. It certainly isn't correlated to success in gateway English courses. The last thing I want to show you is what things look like when we disaggregate our data a little bit, because we are, as I'm sure you are too, absolutely committed to making sure that this kind of approach really works for all of our students, not just some of our students. And so I'm happy to share, again, some very new and recent data which disaggregates what I've just shown you, success rates, for instance, in gateway math classes by race. And so you can see here, disaggregated out African-American students, Latinx students, and white students. These are the most populous racial groups in the state of Georgia. Clearly, we have students of other races too, but I'm mainly looking at these three today just because of the numbers at the N involved. And you can see, again, there's some variation based on preparation, and you can see the kind of the curves of the different racial groups kind of interweave with one another, but I think it's reasonable to say that we have completely eliminated any kind of disparity based on outcomes for race in students passing gateway math classes going through the co-requisite model. And I could show you a similar chart to do exactly the same kind of thing in English. So all in all, this is, I think, very positive data for this new approach. We certainly have evidence to show that the improvements that we have here are not just limited to students passing those gateway math classes and those gateway English classes, but we also similarly have data showing that students' success continues on to subsequent classes. These students who are in past their gateway English class go on into our English 1102, the second semester English, and are able to pass and earn grades in that class in very similarly to other students who didn't go through remediation or went through the traditional kinds of remediation. It's just many more of those students now do that than ever did before. And similarly in math, but students who go on to take subsequent math classes earn grades that are every bit as strong as they ever did in the previous kinds of remediation approaches, again, but just simply significantly more, double, triple the proportions of students moving on into those subsequent math classes. So that's kind of the picture in the state of Georgia. Just for completion, I'll show you that this is part and parcel of a much broader approach to student success that we're undertaking in the University System of Georgia, what we call the momentum approach, which is a multifaceted approach to student success, again, implemented across all 26 of our campuses from fall 2019 onwards. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I'll hand over to, let me see, there we go. And I'll hand over to Emily, who can tell us all about co-requisite English. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Our story at Rowan College is very similar to Tristan's story. Basically, what happened with my college was the administration, and probably around 2012, decided to eliminate, beginning with writing, and then we were going to go from there, developmental education, and aim toward a co-requisite model. So we started with English. At the time, I actually came on board a little bit later. The vice president of academic services went to a couple of key instructors and in the English department, and they went to Dr. DeTora, who was responsible for developmental writing. At the time, we had 3 levels of developmental writing: 044, 066, 088. 044 was sentence level. It was the students who earned the very, very, very low end of the Accuplacer scores placed into 044. 066 was like the paragraph level, and 088 was the essay level. So basically, at first, they eliminated the bottom 2 tiers and put everybody into a super version of 088, which was meant to prepare everybody quickly for the college level 101. And that they did that for about a year. And then once again, they said, why don't we take that super 088 and make it a co-requisite, make it a 101A, which is kind of where I came into the conversation. So the way, once it became mine, I always kind of thought about it as a bridge between where students are at present. They test into this developmental level, this 088 level, and where I want them to end up at the end of the semester, where they would be right along the same pace as the students who test into the traditional 101 course. And then thinking ahead towards the future, towards Eng 102, where the students will have to build on the knowledge that they have learned in 101 and write essays and about literature, and to conduct more research and build on those prior skills, right? So that's Eng 101A, and we've been doing that since, let's say, 2014, somewhere around there. And that's been working out really well. And then for the students who do not test place into 101A, we recognize that we had a tier of students who still needed support. We took we eliminated the 066 and 044 model. And at the time, one of my colleagues had created a course, an elective for Principles of English Grammar. And the administration came to her and said, why don't we take your elective and make it a course for students who test at the before 101E level. So we drastically changed that. And that's worked out pretty well, because instead of focusing on, pre-essay writing, the students focus on diagramming sentences and learning the parts of speech and learning the tools that they'll need to write more in the future. And we do incorporate a lot of writing in the grammar course. The students have 7 short writing assignments 1 page a piece. So they are using the skills that they learn in the class. And then they will further build on those skills when they take 101. And I'm working on a way of measuring how students perform in 101E who had 107 before and those who didn't. The nice thing about both classes is they are credit-bearing courses. 101E it counts to everybody outside of the college. It's fully transferable as a 101 course. They just have that extra credit. It's 4 credits instead of 3. So the students can get the extra time that they need during instruction. And we've been using that in various ways, typically reinforcing grammatical skills and research writing skills and things that the students in 101 don't necessarily need as much. And the grammar class is general education elective as well. And then finally, in this past fall, we eliminated developmental reading and created a kind of a sister course with our grammar principles of grammar course, and it's called Readings and Literature. And we've been I don't have any data on that because it's brand new, but the students seem to enjoy it a lot more than they did the readings course. We basically took the literature components of Eng 102, which is our English Composition 2 course. And so we teach short fiction, poetry, drama, and the students have 7 short writing assignments. So it's very similar in a lot of ways to the Principles of Grammar course. And students who end up in both of those courses placing in them, and that happens quite a lot, they pair nicely together. So I'm pleased to see what will happen. What I'm most excited to see in the future is how students who took Eng 104 compare when they go to take 102 with students who took the previous reading 099 course. I have a feeling that they will do much better. So those are my 3 courses for developmental writing. And I'm ready to hand it over.
Emily, thank you so much. And now we'll hand over to Amy and Brandon. Take us back to math.
Great. Well, first off, welcome. I'm glad that y'all could make it to the session. We are here at the college working, even though the college has closed itself down. We are not following the CDC's 6-foot rule, but if we did, we wouldn't be on camera. So there you go. Well, hopefully we'll make it out of this okay. Navarro College has had kind of an up and down roller coaster. Well, ever since I've been in developmental education. The state wanted us to run something in NCBM classes for a while. Those were where we basically put everyone in a single lab and everybody worked at their own pace and finished the course whenever they wanted to finish. That became mandated for a while. Lots of mandates came in from the course. So when the Co-Recs came out, we were a little skeptical. But we went in and started doing it. The state of Texas said in fall of 18, we had to have 25% of our developmental courses, or 25% of students in a Co-Rec course. So we piloted in spring of 18, went 25% in fall, and actually showed some great success rates. And you can jump in anytime.
Well, and I was the person that piloted it, and I was probably the person that thought this was crazy as well. And I ended up in the class, there were 22 students, and of the 22, 20 passed. And that was, to me, miraculous. And really what it came down to when I started looking at the ones that passed versus the 2 students who hadn't passed, it was all about attendance. If they were coming to both of the classes and they were paying attention and they were doing their homework like they should, they were passing. And so to me, that proved that it can do what it's meant to do. If the students put the effort forth and they come to class and they do their homework, they become at the same level as a student who did not require developmental education, which is what we were trying to happen anyway. And I think that doing a pilot like that when this first started probably was what saved us, and being able to show that the adjuncts that we have on our other campuses, because we do have a lot of adjuncts on our off campuses, that this wasn't just a, say Brandon,
Well, it's just not another buzzword, right? Because we get a lot of buzzwords in education. And this wasn't a buzzword. This is something that is working. This is something that every state in the U.S. is looking into. And it kind of added some legitimacy to another style. And let's face it, for them, a lot more work. Our adjuncts, we've kind of spoiled them over the years. And we've told them, look, I mean, here's your curriculum, here's some good lecture notes, here's this great software that you're going to be working through, and here's everything. Well, whenever it came down to co-rec, they said, well, what do we do? And we said, well, we don't know. It's all going to depend on your credit-bearing instructor. So they really were concerned about that. And some of those concerns still aren't alleviated. We've combated a lot of that by going with the integrated review software for the 2 courses, but we're getting there, and those adjuncts that were completely adamant against are really buying into this very, very well, and we're starting to see great success rates, and we're seeing these kids that before, we would still hit a pretty good pass rate. I would say that anything less than 100% is unacceptable. But we were getting okay pass rates, but we're seeing that those have jumped up significantly. There's just less time for life to get in the way. We've gone from when we first started developmental education, having a 4-semester 4-semester sequence for the students that were the lowest level. So students that tested the lowest would have basically a mathematical literacy course, jumping into an introductory algebra that fed into an intermediate algebra that then fed into college algebra. Well, when at any point in that 4 semesters, if life gets in the way, that student drops out. And that was one of the biggest pieces of the co-rec for me, is seeing, look, we've taken a 4-semester, so 2-year sequence, and we've basically been able to cut that into, at maximum, 3 semesters.
The reason he said
2 semesters.
Yeah, at maximum is because the state of Texas only requires students who test at a certain level to be part of the co-rec. Lower level students are actually allowed to take our introductory algebra, which we still offer. And what we've done is co-rect that with our adult-based education, so that those students get the lower skills of adding and subtracting fractions and that stuff through the ABE program. And then we're working on that introductory algebra. And a student who does the co-rect with the ABE for the introductory would have a couple different options the following semester. If they needed the stats or contemporary math, they could just go directly into those, since at that point they are CSI complete for the non-algebraic or non-STEM majors. And then they could at that point either go into the intermediate algebra, which is our second level of developmental. We offer just one of those, usually in the spring, I think is when we've decided to offer that course just one time a year. Or they could go into the co-rec with the college algebra. So if a student starts at our lowest level in our ABE 3 and 4, they would take feasibly 2 semesters, which previously would have been 2 years. So even for our lower level students, we're still trying to shorten that span from getting into the college and getting out of that college algebra or statistics course, whatever they're required to do. The other thing we're working really hard on right now, and it's a little stressful, is we have a large online population of students who take developmental. And we've been working on creating online co-recs. We did college algebra last fall with fairly abysmal results. And this semester we've tried again and reworked the way we're doing them and having much better results this time. So that's very exciting. Brandon is doing a stats online as well. We kind of made them look the same so that
and I will say at this point, out of a class of about 15 students, only 2 students are failing that online course, which is incredibly impressive. We were looking at 30 to 40% maximum pass rate in online mathematics and developmental courses. So at this point, it's looking pretty good. Just anecdotally, I don't have that data available at this point. We're still in the middle of the semester and they're coming up on midterms. So, but it's looking pretty good so far. Engagement is up, and so they're looking better.
And we do offer co-recs in all of our 4 major courses, our gateway courses. So we have a stats, a contemporary math, a business math, and a college algebra. College algebra and stats being our 2 largest courses that we offer here at the college. We only offer 1 contemporary math each semester, and then we only offer 1 business math typically in the fall. We're also going to look into creating a supplemental instruction for pre-cal, and we have quite a few students who are going through our college algebra program in the co-rec and then going into pre-cal with actually, they get 6 hours worth of help when they're in our co-rec, because we do a 3x3 model, and then they go into pre-cal and they don't get any extra help, and they're struggling a little bit, not so much with the content, I just think with having that extra assistance. So we're looking at maybe doing some type of supplemental instruction in a math lab, kind of saying, hey, if you need help, these are the times we're going to do extra help on certain subjects, just to give them that chance. And then of course that also benefits the students who didn't go through the co-rec that maybe need the extra help as well. So there's some other ideas we've got going on.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for everyone for sharing what they have going on in their colleges. I think it's we'd like to see what kind of questions that you all have out there. So if I think there's the chat box for you to be able to post your questions, and as they come in, then we'll be happy to see what we can do to answer them.
I'm going to jump back in and start fielding any questions that came in and just read them off to you. So this one, the first that we have, came in for Brandon and Amy at Navarro. How do you have a layout or model of how you're doing online co-requisites, and what are the items that you're doing?
Okay, so the first semester we did a commingled online course where I had the developmental side on my side, and then they were additionally enrolled into a online college algebra course. That does not work well for us. The students were very confused about what class they would do first, even though we were trying to do the announcement. So they would try to do the college algebra class and not have the prerequisite knowledge, and it just was not very successful. We had maybe 3 or 4 students who actually passed. So this last semester, we kind of went back to our administration and said, that didn't really work. Can you please let us cohort them? So what we did was we had 25 students who were signed up for both the developmental and the college algebra online. All I put in we use Canvas, so the only thing that I put in Canvas on mine was, please go to the college algebra course. And what we ended up doing was building the entire 6 hours of the course all in the college algebra course, since they were all cohorted together anyway. And then we also did the first 2 weeks of class was nothing but the developmental. So for the first 2 weeks, all we did was the pre-material we start in chapter 4, so we just looked at what the pre-material would be for chapter 4, and we spent the first 2 weeks doing that. So they didn't actually have their first college algebra assignment until the 3rd week of school, and that really helped because that allowed them to get some of the skills that come up in if you're familiar with the college algebra textbook that we use, or the concise approach. Chapter 4 is all about graphing, and there's quite a bit of things that they need to know how to do in that, and it's a very quick paced sections. And so that has worked out really well, and we've kind of built that all into one course where they have lecture videos over everything. And then they go into Hawks and the integrated review, and we've built it where they only use the integrated review. They don't bounce between the two softwares, they just do the one. And we did some fancy things in Hawks to make it where they have 2 separate grades. It's fun. And then of course, I'm doing this with Dr. Reed, who's another instructor here at the college, and we just field questions. It doesn't matter if they have a question about developmental, if they have a question about the college algebra, we answer questions for everything. So we told them at the beginning, you have 2 instructors, use as much as you would like. You can ask either one of us any question we can answer.
And then stats. Stats is a little different from the college algebra. We still went with the cohort model because, again, we went with the assumption that we don't want the students to know which is the developmental and which is the credit. Because once the students realize that the credit course affects their GPA and the developmental course does not, they're going to put all of their eggs in one basket and try to watch that one basket and just hope that nothing, happens, which is notoriously not the case. So what we do is I don't indicate first, I don't use the word developmental at all. I use the word support course, that these are supporting assignments that are required for a grade. So when the students start the course, we have gone in prior to the start of the semester. I look at the sections that the credit level instructor are going to teach. I work through all of those problems to determine pre-knowledge. Then I use the integrated review software back in under Hawks and go through the R sections. The R sections that I can utilize, I assign just flat out. They can do the learn, they can do the practice, they can do the certified, just like they would in the stats class. Any additional material, I use the curriculum and question builder through the software, create those. And so the students basically have 2 set of assignments per week. Now I've had to communicate that you're effectively in 6 hours. So you're in 2 separate courses. You are expected to do 2 separate amounts of work. It's going to feel like a lot. So I usually have the week start, of course, on Monday. My homework for the support course would be due on a Thursday, which then allows Friday, Saturday, and then the credit-bearing course is due on Sunday. And then we offer virtual office hours through Upswing. And then we use EduCreations and Microsoft Teams to upload videos for students to view, things like that. But really, we run it like we would a face-to-face course, where our lectures they're shortened. So we try to maintain the rule of having 5-minute videos tops. Sometimes we have to deviate 8-9 minutes, but usually try to stick to 5 minutes. And then we're just really flexible throughout the course. So at some point in the stats, you kind of run out of the developmental material because they've already got it. So at that point, about halfway through the course, we transition that support course as less preemptive instruction and more supportive instruction. So we're starting to turn that corner now in the semester, where I'm going to start being more of a, how are you doing? We need to have this 2-hour office space that we are going to connect to Canvas or Upswing, and we're going to talk about anything that you're struggling with. I use the Hawks reporting tools to determine what is the top missed problems that are being missed. And then I go and I create videos over those specific 4 or 5 questions so that they're out there. So I become more of a support tool than I would at the start of the course, where I preemptively teach these students just-in-time remediation. Hope that answers the question. Any follow-up with that? If I completely missed it, let me know.
Well, I'd also like to ask, just as a follow-up to everybody, for your on-campus courses, how is everyone organizing those as far as the students cohorting versus co-mingling? Have you run into any challenges with that?
From Georgia, and then and Emily can tell us about what she's doing. So across our system, we're using a lot of different formats, but we now have some very early data that suggests whether particular approaches are producing better results than others. One of the nice things about being able to do this work across a system is just having so many students and so many institutions that we can then start to compare whether particular approaches are better than others. And again, better not just in the sense of having a better pass rate, but actually having a better pass rate all across the preparation spectrum. So here's what we see. So in the English side, it seems as though schools are obtaining better results if they use the same instructor in both the co-requisite side and the credit-bearing side. If they're using more hours in the co-requisite rather than fewer. So if we compare results that have 2 or 3 hours in the co-requisite piece to schools that only have 1 hour in the co-requisite piece, the schools that have 2 or 3 hours are getting better results than the schools that only have 1 hour. When we compare the approach of keeping all of the students in a co-requisite support class together when they go into the credit-bearing class, compared with kind of scattering them willy-nilly across bunches of different sections, it's better to keep them all together. And then we still don't have definitive data as to whether it's better to have a mixed class or sometimes called a commingled class. So in other words, students who are co-requisite and not co-requisite students together in the class, or only to have co-requisite students. The data that is there is still somewhat muddy, and we're trying to figure out ways in which we can unmuddy that. On the math side, the only thing that we know is that it appears to be better to have a commingled class, that actually you seem to get better results across our system anyway if the students are mixed together rather than having them only co-requisite students together. It's not a huge effect size, but it is significant. But the other different methodologies, we don't have any evidence that one is better than another, whether it's better to have the same instructor or different and all those kinds of things. On math, it doesn't seem as though there's any definitive answer right now as to which is the best approach.
Emily, do you mind sharing how your courses might be organized?
Sure. For the most part, we keep all of our co-requisite students together, so they don't actually get intermingled with the non-co-requisite students until they enter Eng 102 together, the second semester of English composition. So that's sort of where we see how they measure up compared to the ones who didn't. And that's just the way it was always. What does happen sometimes is because Eng 104 and Eng 107 are also gen eds, sometimes students who do not, place into those courses will take them as electives. So then they will be performing right alongside the co-requisite students, and they don't, I don't identify anybody as anything. They're just in there together, and so that works out pretty well. But yeah, for the most part, I would say probably 95 to 99% of the students in Eng 107 and Eng 104 are ones who placed into it, and then 100% is placed into the 101A, and then everybody hopefully moves into 102 at the end of that process.
And just to ask one more time, do you organize your on-campus courses the same as you do your online for Brandon and Amy? Is it no different as far as how you have to run those classes?
No, our online classes are commingled with 2 different instructors. So they would go to their support course for 3 hours, and then that entire class would go to a college algebra class with an additional 10 students. So we do 20 developmental students and 10 credit ready students for the college algebra, and then of course those 20. And then we typically, for our math side, we like to have the developmental course happen prior to the credit level course. We're trying really hard when we do our scheduling to make that happen. So it's a little more difficult sometimes than others. But for our English instructor actually prefers to come after the English class. So he says that that's a little bit better for them, but it's the same setup that we have for the math side. They do 20 developmental students, and they roll into a, well, do they do 20?
They actually roll into 40. So they'll have 2 like for a history, they'll have 20 developmental students in one section, 20 developmental students in another section, and then they feed into a section of 40 in a history lecture. But yeah, so we do commingled in a face-to-face, but we do cohorted online, and that was mainly for a structural
A lot easier to explain to a student, and they're sitting in a classroom, how the class is going to happen and how the things are going to work. But when you're looking at an online student, it's very difficult to bounce between two Canvas things, explaining that, yes, I need you to go to this Canvas course first, and then you're going to go to this one. And for us, the benefit of being commingled in a face-to-face class is that they are talking with another student who is a credit level or credit ready student. So they're kind of, the idea would be raising up to their standards and that kind of atmosphere. Well, that's not going to happen in an online class. There's not that communication. There's not that interactive working that you see in a face-to-face class. So we feel that the cohort online is kind of the way that those courses need to go, just basically for management and structure wise.
And just as a follow-up for those that do have to or are implementing in a commingled format, have you seen challenges as far as the dual teaching and having 2 instructors working with the students as far as the implementation of the content and creating consistency between the 2 faculty?
Yes, communication is, I'm sorry, I just jumped right in there. Yes, communication is absolutely essential. I'm teaching quite a few college algebra sections this semester, and Amy is actually paired as the developmental side with myself and another instructor. Well, there are several sections that we teach completely different. And so Amy and I and Amy and the other instructor tend to meet at least 3 times a week, if not more, just to discuss, well, how are you going to teach this topic? And the more you get to know the instructor you're paired with, the less that's the case. But Amy has to teach differently based on the instructor. I was the credit instructor teaching college algebra, and I was paired with Amy, and I was paired with an adjunct, and the adjunct didn't meet with me as often. She very, very veteran teacher, but just kind of taught it the way that she wanted to teach the course, and it really threw the students off considerably, because I would teach one way, and then the developmental side would teach it a completely different way, and the students just threw their hands up. Another thing you have to be very, very careful with as well is make sure that this is not an a la carte course. Like, I can take this college algebra and then I'm just going to pick whichever support course out there that I want.
You can do that. Lone Star College is actually doing that, but they have a set schedule, and
Yes.
literally everybody does the exact same thing every day. Like, there's no, this is my schedule and this is this instructor's schedule. No, everybody does the exact same thing
Right.
every day. And so
It did not work here.
No, it would not work here. We couldn't make that work here. But I mean, if your entire faculty is behind that type of style, then I think the a la carte would be fine. But again, everybody has to stay on the same pace at the same time and basically teach the same way, which is also another struggle because again, I can't go from one development instructor who's teaching me this way and then go to a college algebra that's teaching it something different. And that's just gonna, for a developmental student, it's just gonna confuse them. So. Possible, just difficult.
This is just a really common theme, that communication and consistency really is key. That no matter if you're working with only one instructor, making sure that they really communicate well to the students exactly what the different aspects of the course are. If you have more than one instructor, just as Brendan and Amy had said, it's just really crucial that there is this ongoing communication between those two faculty members to know exactly how it is that they are, even how it is that they're talking about the different steps that are elements of a particular problem, the way in which you approach trying to solve various problems, because students get confused incredibly quickly. And even though as mathematicians we often know that the solutions of these different solution methodologies are completely isomorphic to one another, it's just different ways of describing the same thing. That may be obvious to us and is completely not obvious to the students that we're trying to serve here. And so a well-meaning way of being able to describe it in this way may absolutely throw people for a loop. Perfectly fine to talk about it afterwards, later on when those students have mastered that technique, to say, oh, well, actually, there's several different ways that you could do this. But to do it when we're trying to learn it, it's just disastrous. It's absolutely crucial that everyone stays on the same page.
And I'll pose this question to everybody. We'd be interested to hear what was the most significant challenge you all faced on your campuses in implementing these co-requisites, and how did you address that?
So let me pick that up in the system, and then the folk can chip in too. As you might imagine, the most significant challenge was really people's skepticism as whether or not this could work, because it's new, it's different, and it sort of really goes against everything that we had up until then really thought was the way that pedagogy could unfold. That, we bought very much in, just as I think the whole community did, that the reason why students were finding a lack of success in these early math or English classes was because their level of preparation wasn't good enough. And so because of that, we need to do something to make sure that they were better prepared. And then when they were better prepared, they would do better. And actually, when you run the data and you actually see what actually happens, that is not the case. That actually, it is much better to have this just-in-time kind of remediation running in parallel with these credit-bearing classes. And when you do that, everybody does much better and actually learns the material much more effectively and much more deeply. So the big challenge we had was really to help people to see that. And the tool that we used to do that was really sharing the very detailed, broken down data that we had to show them that, yeah, absolutely. No matter which of the students, I think this is the thing, all of our faculty were very well-meaning. They absolutely wanted the best for the students, but they were considerably concerned about whether this student or that student or another student could be successful in this new model. And when we showed them that not only were they successful, they were twice as successful as they were using the other kinds of approaches, it was much more easy to get people to buy into it.
We had challenges from the standpoint of being able to staff the courses. That was a big challenge for us. We still run into that now. It's feast or famine. In the fall, we're all teaching 8 courses. Triple overload. In the spring, we might be lucky to make a standard 5-section load. We are still working on that. Currently talking about being a little more flexible whenever it comes to calculation of load. Our load may look like 6 in the fall, 4 in the spring. But we also had issue finding qualified adjuncts. Because we are more of a rural area, and that we had to increase our number of full-timers to be able to do that. We also ran into issues with our adjuncts. I think mentioned it earlier, where the adjuncts were given everything to start, and now we're leaning on them to basically create based on the needs of their particular faculty member. The integrated review has helped with that because we are able to basically have a little bit of autonomy for the developmental side. From the credit side, we can assign them homework, we can give them stuff to do that will support. Whereas before that wasn't the case. We had to supplement with worksheets and handouts and, you know, more group activities.
Professor Maddox, did you have any significant challenge in terms of implementing?
Yeah, most of the challenges are the same that Tristan mentioned, where we had skepticism, which hasn't gone away completely, but mostly. And it's just a matter of patience and communication. And one of the things that I did from the beginning was work very closely with the adjuncts and the administration to make sure everybody was on the same page. So that helped a lot in terms of the overall instruction of the content. And then making sure that 101 and 101E were doing or aligned closely. Now I'm a co-coordinator with the 101 coordinator. So we're both the coordinators of both courses. So that makes it a lot better in terms of ensuring that 101 and 101A are right where they should be together. We assess our students the same way. We look at the same data metrics as they move into 102. So that's helped a lot in terms of getting instructors on board, and there was the most skepticism, I think, with the grammar course, as when we wanted to create the readings and literature course, everybody jumped on board with that. So that was a surprising element.
Thank you so much. Dr. Denley is going to have to leave here in just a minute, and we do have one final question that is actually for Brandon and Amy. So I will direct that at you, and then we'll wrap up here in just a second. So the question is, how did you determine that Hawks was the software that you would actually use in your co-requisites? You're muted.
We muted ourselves. Well, we have been using Hawks for many years. Whenever it actually came to using the co-requisite, we chose Hawks because of not only their support, but also their reporting features, and for the fact that they had already created all of those R sections, basically the developmental sections. So if you are not familiar with the software, I'll give a little bit of a shameless plug. When you log in and when the student has the integrated review software, if you're looking at chapter 4, let's say chapter 4 is graphing and parabolas and different types of functions, then the R sections will be finding the slope of a line, 2 points. It'll be how do you evaluate, because we know we need to do that for the quadratic formula, things like that. So that's already been identified, which is extremely helpful to the students or for the adjuncts that are teaching the course. They don't have to go out and basically create all that knowledge base to start. Additionally, it's been extremely helpful for me when you go in and you look at the analytics. Their analytics pieces are phenomenal. We can go in, we can see the number of students that have and have not certified. We can drill down even further and see the percentage of students that did or did not miss a problem. So before I start any course, at least an hour before any course, I go in and I pull up the classes assignment reviewer, and then if more than 50% have missed a question, I make note of what that question is. And then I go into class and say, look, before we get started on new stuff, I've got these 5 questions that y'all are really struggling with. And I work those questions and we discuss it.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. That's a really cool part about the co-rec as well, because as long as the instructor has given you access to their college algebra side of the course, as a developmental instructor, I can do the same thing. So I can go into the assignment reviewer and say, okay, guys, I looked at your homework and I noticed that you were missing the following 2 or 3 questions. And I can do that as kind of supplemental instruction in the co-requisite class, in addition to whatever he does if he's in the college algebra class or any of the different softwares that they offer the co-recs in. And we are, just so you kind of know how it goes, our college algebra is been using the co-requisite since the fall of 19, I believe. Yeah, we started that then. And then in the fall of 20, we will be going with the Hawks integrated review for all of our co-requisite courses. So our stats, our contemporary, and our business math will all be on the integrated review.
It's just, it's completely a game changer for the developmental sequence, because up until we went that way, we were giving worksheets. We were trying to find stuff for them to do. We've been playing Kahoots, which are all great, and they're great pieces. But from an assessment standpoint, we needed to be able to run student learning outcomes. And the ability to do that through the Hawk software is a game changer. It's phenomenal.
Excellent. Well, I want to just take the time to thank you all so much, those of you on the panel, as well as those of you attending today. If you have any questions at all, you can feel free to direct them to us at marketing@hawkslearning.com, and we'll be emailing links out to all sessions at the conclusion of our virtual summit. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Yeah, y'all have a good day too. And if y'all have any questions for us, Amy or myself, you can direct them, I'm assuming, to Hawks, and Hawks will get those sent over to us. But
absolutely,
we're happy to help with anything that y'all are struggling with.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.